Hey everyone, hope you all are well. The first thing I'm doing today, as always, is priming the eye area, and to do that I'm using the Urban Decay Primer Potion. So I've just swiped a little of this onto my eyelid, and now I'm using the Sigma 3D HD Precision brush just to pat that primer into the skin. And priming the eye will just help our shadows to apply nice and smoothly, to blend nice and easily, and then they'll last all day long as well. So the palette I'm using today is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette, and the first shade I'm taking is called Buon Fresco. This is a lovely cool toned mauve shade, and it's got a matte finish to it, and I've just picked this up on a Sedona Lace EB09 Universal Blending Brush, and I'm adding this shadow into the crease of the eye. So I'm just using little back and forward sweeping motions and then circular motions to really buff this shadow into the crease. And I initially keep my brush nice and deep in the crease, and then as I've got less product on my brush, I raise it up a little higher and higher, bringing it gradually up towards the brow bone to really smoke out that shadow. And when I get to the outer corner of the eye too, I'm winging it outwards just to give me a nice elongated appearance. So I always like to go in with a couple of layers of each shade that I use, because I find that you can get either a nice blend or great pigmentation, but not both on the first application. So in this instance, I'm chuffed with the blend, but the shadow could definitely be more striking, so I'm just adding a second layer. Next then, I'm switching to a small bullet shaped brush, and this came in a set from Vanity Planet that I got years ago, and it owes me absolutely nothing. So I'm just using this to sweep some of that same shadow all the way down along the lower lash line, and I'm making sure then to connect it up on that outer edge. I want no gaps to my shadow. Then I'm taking the eyeshadow Love Letter, and this is a nice cool toned kind of deep pinky berry shade, and it's also got a matte finish to it. And I'm just using that same Sedona Lace EB09 Universal Blending Brush to apply this shade. So I'm starting by tapping the shadow down on the outer third of the eye, right at that lash line, and then I'm using little circular motions to coat the lid. I'm very gradually then just pulling this colour up into the crease on that outer edge, and then I'm taking it across the eye. And I'm just really working this in, making sure that I've got no harsh edges. That's one great thing about the Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. The quality of the shadows for the most part is fantastic. There has been a couple of dud palettes, but this isn't one of them. I have no problem blending of any of the shades. My only gripe is the fact that when you dip your brush into the pan, there is a lot of kickback, but just make sure to really tap your brush off before you apply your shadow, so that way you avoid fallout, or I suppose even just limit fallout, I should say, down onto the face. But once I'm happy then with how that shadow looks, I'm then taking that small bullet shaped brush again, and I'm adding that shade Love Letter down along the lower lash line. And when you're applying your shadow with a dense brush like this, if you're having a problem with fallout, try just tapping and pressing the shadow along the lash line as opposed to using sweeping motions like I am. It definitely does help. Up until this point, I've left the half of the eyelid bare, so I'm going to change that now. I've taken the shade Vermeer, which is a light pinky beige frosty shadow, and I'm using a Blank Canvas Cosmetics E24 brush just to apply this shade. So a flat C-shaped brush is perfect for applying a shadow to the lid area because it just curves with the eye really nicely. But I decided I wanted that lid area to sparkle a little bit more, so I figured I would go in with an Inglot pigment, and I've just dampened my brush with some water, dipped my brush into the pigment, and now I'm pressing this over the top of the shadow on the lid just to add a bit more sparkle. And I suppose I more so then used that Vermeer shade as a base, and then I added the pigment on top. But now I'm going back in with that Sedona Lace EB09 blending brush, and I'm just using what's left on my brush to make sure that that pink matte shadow on the lid fades in nicely with the frosty shade. I want those two textures to blend seamlessly into one another, so I'm just wriggling my brush back and forth between the two until I'm happy. Next then, I'm taking the shade Cypress Umber, which is a deep matte brown, and I'm using this shadow to add some depth. So I picked up the shade on a small dense C-shaped brush from Sedona Lace. It's much smaller than the one that I used on the lid, and I'm just pressing this shadow into the lash line on the outer corner of the eye. So as I said, I'm using this shadow to add some depth, but a subtle amount at the same time, which is why I didn't go in with a black shadow like I usually would. I've just used a very small amount of this, and I'm really taking my time working from that lash line up towards the crease, just on the outer section of the eye. Then I'm picking back up my universal blending brush again, and I'm sweeping over the edges just to make sure that everything is nice and soft and blended. The small dense brush is great for applying, but not so much for blending, which is why I've gone in with the fluffy one. Next then, I'm taking this pencil from NARS. It's a deep brown and it's called Last Frontier. I'm running this back and forward along the waterline, and then I'm closing my eye around the pencil, just running it back and forward again to make sure that I'm coating both the top and bottom waterline. I'm now going back in with that Cypress Umber shade on a Sigma angled brush, and I'm just wriggling this brush in between the lashes and spreading the shadow there, because we've got the brown on the waterline and then obviously the pink on the lash line, and there's just too much a divide between the colours, so I wanted to wriggle some of the brown in there so it makes the transition a bit more seamless. And I've also done it along the upper lash line as well. So now I'm taking Tempera, the light shimmery shade. I'm using this around the tear duct of my eye just to add a bit of brightness. I've added some lashes. These are the Eyeliner 141 style, and then I'm using the new It Cosmetics mascara just to coat the bottom lashes, and then also to blend my own lashes in with the false ones. And the tip of this brush has a nice spiky head, so it's really good for getting those lashes right on the outer corner of the eye. But then that's it. So I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, whatever you're doing, whether it's on your own, with a partner, with your gals. Have a great day, and I'll catch you soon.